Hi, welcome to this video. My name is William Yang, the lecturer of the ETP program. When it comes to resume writing, you may have a few questions. How do I distinguish between a resume and a CV? You may also want to know what to include in a resume. So now, I would like to offer you a quick guide to writing a resume. Over the next 5 minutes, we're going to walk you through some simple elements in a resume. So if you're ready, let's get started. So let's try to compare a resume and a CV. Resume is a term we borrow from French, résumé, and CV is a term we borrow from Latin, which means curriculum vitae, the course of life. So when we use the resume, we use it to apply for most of the jobs or the graduate schools. So resume can be used in the most general sense. And CV is a document we use when we want to apply for academically and research-oriented positions. So when you want to apply, for example, a professor position in college, we want to apply for a researcher in an institute, you may need to prepare a CV instead. It's also important to know that, in essence, a resume is supposed to be more brief. So a resume should be kept to 1 page, and a CV has to be more detailed. So it's very common to find a multiple-page CV. It's also important to know that we use resume in American English, and we use CV in British English. So now you know the difference between the two. But you may still have one more question. How do I know when to submit a CV, when to submit a resume? In fact, you can check the JD. Most of the job descriptions will tell you what document you should prepare. If you look at the example in the middle within the red box, here it specifically asks you to prepare a CV in English. So now you know how to distinguish between the two. All right, so now let's move on to our second part. Now let's look at some do's and don'ts when it comes to writing a resume. So we have 4 do's and we have 4 don'ts. Now, the first do, keep it to 1 page. A resume is supposed to be brief, so we just keep it to 1 A4 size page. Now, the second do, the sequence matters. So when you arrange the items on the resume, check, and you place the most advantageous information about you at the top of the resume. Because we read from the top to the bottom, so you want to make sure that the readers can find the most advantageous information about you first. And now, the third do, keep it brief. So you only have 1 A4 size page, so we don't use sentences. Instead, we use keywords and phrases only. And because of that, we don't need periods either. Now, the fourth do, highlight your impacts. Again, you don't just describe what you do. You want to highlight, you want to underscore the impacts you bring. For example, instead of just writing, let a team to deal with accounting, you may say, let a 5-member team. We specify the size of the team to speed up the accounting process. Instead of just writing, managing the fan page, you may say, increase the fan page likes by 20% within 5 weeks. So here we try to quantify the information. Now let's move on to the 4 don'ts. The first one, we want to avoid using a one-size-fits-all version. You don't just use one single resume for different kinds of applications. Wise readers can tell that. It's very disrespectful and unprofessional. Now the second don't, you want to avoid irrelevant information. For example, you're applying for accounting internship, but you try to highlight your experience as the poster designer. They're not relevant. Now, the third don't, you want to avoid inconsistent tenses, especially when you use the verbs. We tend to use the past tense when describing the past experiences. And we use the present progressive tense when describing ongoing experiences. So you don't want to jump between different tenses to confuse the readers. Now, the fourth don't, avoid typos. Be sure to double check, triple check your contents. Make sure the text, the content is flawless. Third, let's look at what to include in a resume. In total, we can find a total of 8 elements. But don't worry, some of the elements are optional. Also, it's important to know that the sequence of the elements is also flexible, except for elements 1, 2, and 8. The other elements can be adjustable in order. Let's start with the first one, contact information. So in number 1, you want to include your full name in English, your official email, and also your current or permanent address. Because some positions can be geographically sensitive, it's important for the readers to know where you're based. Number 2, the objective. Objective means the goal of this application. You can use an infinitive phrase to describe the objective. For example, to apply for the MSc in management with my experience in leading a club. Number 3, education. For most of you who are going to graduate or who are fresh graduates, your education can speak a lot about you. Number 4, work experience or employment. For those of you who don't have work experience, you can try to include your internships. Again, when you try to phrase elements 3 and 4, you want to list the most recent experience first. Now, let's talk about the next 4 elements. Number 5, leadership. Some positions or programs may emphasize the importance of leadership. If that's the case, you want to describe your leadership experience. Number 6, your skills and qualifications. You can include your hard and soft skills. For example, the ability to apply softwares, the coding language you've learned. For qualifications, you can include your certificates and licenses you have acquired. Be sure to specify when exactly you acquire the certificates and the licenses. 7th, honors and achievements. Like number 5, this one is also optional. So you can maybe try to describe if you've ever been invited to join some academic society like Beta, Gamma, Sigma, or you have maybe joined some competition, you have done well, you made it through to the final round, you even try to win certain titles in a competition, or you have won a scholarship, or you have done well in a course, and you, for example, earn an extremely high grade in a course. Number 8, the final element, references. Many applicants tend to ignore this one, but references are important. References means information about the person who is willing to recommend you for the post. And this person is often the so-called referee. Right? So after today's talk, I believe that now you know how to write a resume. Of course, there's a lot more you may need to find out about writing a resume. So why don't you join us at Advanced Oral Training? You're going to find out more about the secrets to writing an effective resume. I'll see you soon. Bye.